In 1950, the state of Florida had a population of 2.7 million, a respectable amount for the time, equivalent to that of present-day Arkansas. But the explosive growth that came after that was not expected by anyone, with the state jumping to a population of 21.5 million, making it the third biggest state in the Union. Now, because of this growth, the major cities of the state have started to connect to form a Florida Peninsula megalopolis. Now, before the video starts, I wanted to ask if you would please consider subscribing to the channel. I make geography content like this every single week, so if you like consistent content on these topics, I suggest you subscribe to the channel. Also, I really appreciate it. Thank you. So most of Florida's major growth has come outside the Panhandle, and even though those areas have also gained a ton of population, I don't consider them to be part of the real megalopolis, so I won't be talking about them today. What I consider to be the Florida Peninsula megalopolis is this area of the state, with the northern boundaries being Jacksonville and Gainesville. So let's go through the cities of the megalopolis and show the insane growth that they've seen. Starting in the southwest corner with the Cape Coral-Fort Myers MSA. So the way I've done stats on these videos is from 1950 to 2020, but the city of Cape Coral was only established in 1957, meaning the overall metropolitan area had a population of just 23,000. So when I say the city has seen a change of 3,165%, that is a very impressive feat, but a little bit misleading, and should really be explained as a growth of 751,000 over that time. Cape Coral's Fort Myers is notable for being full of many pre-planned communities, something that will come up a lot with these Floridian cities, and is a major part of the state's history. This region of Florida is probably the capital of pre-planned communities in the state, which is why it's so new, because this type of expansion only really became widespread in the 50s. Next up is the Tampa Bay Metro, which currently has a population of 3.2 million, a 776% increase from 1950, which is somehow one of the slowest growing areas in the megalopolis. Pinellas County, a major part of the metro, is known for having an abundance of mobile home parks, with approximately 299 of them just within the county lines. If you look at the picture I'm showing on screen right now, you can see the parks on satellite view in the lighter gray color. Next up we have Lakeland, an underrated metro in the megalopolis. It has a population of 725,000, a 1,021% increase from 1950. Lakeland and its surrounding cities are known for being the connectors of Tampa and Orlando, making it so you can go between the cities without leaving up a built-up area even once. Not a lot of people really acknowledge it as its own metro, but I think it deserves a spot in the video, and I'm sure we'll have some viewers from the area that would agree with me. Next up we have Orlando, the third biggest metro in the megalopolis, with a population of 2.6 million. It has had the highest organic growth of any city on the list, at 2,324%. There's a direct correlation here between the opening of Disney World and the population explosion of the city. In fact, Disney World alone employs 77,000 people, enough to hold a major city. Next up we have Daytona Beach, where we find the Atlantic coast for the first time. This metro has a population of 669,000, an 858% increase from 1950. This felt like it needed to be mentioned because the whole eastern coastline is populated, but there aren't really any major metros between the Miami area and the Jacksonville area, so I decided to mention Daytona. Next we have the Melbourne Palm Bay area, with a population of 607,000, with a 2,529% increase. This is the second area that wasn't a thing in 1950, when it only had 24,000 residents living there. Especially with Palm Bay, the whole thing was designed by one company, where they were trying to sell it off to people lot by lot. This worked to an extent, but there are still a lot of neighborhoods completely empty, something you find all around the state. Next up we have the Miami-Fort Lauderdale area, where we see the biggest metropolitan area in the megalopolis, clocking in at 6.7 million, with a 915% increase from 1950, which makes sense because Miami was actually well established as a large city back then, with a population of 734,000, 300,000 more than Tampa had at the time. Miami is the main focal point of the megalopolis, having the biggest skyline, the most densely populated area, and the longest stretching area of continued city, something I find very interesting about the metro. You can travel 115 miles from one end of the metro to the other. That's a 2-hour trip where you wouldn't leave the main city area once. Now we go back north to our two border cities, starting with Jacksonville, which has a population of 1.6 million, making it the fourth biggest metro in the megalopolis. It has an 879% population increase from 1950, when it had just 300,000. Jacksonville is home to the Jaguars, making it one of the smaller cities home to a major sports team in the U.S. The downtown area is not on the coast, but on the St. Johns River, a major waterway that goes through the state. Finally, we have our last city, which is Gainesville. It's the smallest city I included on this list, at a population of 339,000, with a 477% increase. But it felt like its geographical importance to the megalopolis made it required in explaining the story. It's home to the University of Florida campus, being the main focal point of the city. This means it has a great nightlife and a lot of interesting stuff to do around the area. So that's all the major cities in the megalopolis. The amount of growth is seriously insane, and shows you just how quickly Florida became relevant. This comes out to a total population of around 20 million, making it bigger than the Texas Triangle, though it has a lot smaller major cities. The Texas Triangle was around 17 million. Meaning they're around the same size, but the Florida Peninsula has it beat. Something very interesting about the Florida Peninsula is how, unlike any other megalopolis, it's pretty much fully connected. With the Texas Triangle and Southeast megalopolis, the cities are still somewhat spread out, and there are extended areas where you aren't in real cities, but going through small connector towns. Even with the Northeast megalopolis, the portion between Hartford, Connecticut, and Boston, Massachusetts is not at all connected. And you'll see areas where you aren't even going through small towns, but mountainous wilderness. If we're going to be technical, Florida could be the only real megalopolis in the country. Let me show you what I mean. So starting in Cape Coral, it connects easily to Tampa with no problems. Connecting Tampa to Orlando, you run into a bit more trouble. But the area in between Tampa and Plant City still has a lot going on, and you can connect Winter Haven to Orlando using Haines City and the private communities of the Davenport area until you get to Lake Buena Vista. The real trouble is getting from Deltona to Daytona, where you have to stretch it slightly. There's an area near Lake Ashby where Highway 415 goes through, with continuous residential expansion. With that you get to Spruce Creek, which in turn goes to Daytona. This area can't necessarily be called a city, but it's under 10 miles long and you're still going by houses on both sides of the road. Once you're there, the whole eastern coastline is connected, besides a small portion between Scottsmore and Oak Hill, where we see the only real gap in suburbanization. It's 5 miles long, so I give it a pass, but I don't have any excuses because it really isn't built up at all. Other than that, it's just all city. You can drive for 9 hours without leaving urbanization for more than 10 minutes, which I just think is absolutely insane. For the future, I think Florida will have to deal with something major that other megalopolises won't, which is climate change. I don't want to say in 100 years Florida will be 90 or 100% city, because we just don't know what things will look like, and I'm not going to take a guess and end up sounding dumb. Miami's in a terrible spot for this, with an ocean on one side and the Everglades on the other side. You know, I'm actually very interested to see over the next 50 years if it morphs into a sort of San Francisco, because it really has nowhere to expand but up. I think it'll become very dense in the near future. Finally, I wanted to quickly talk about the politics of the Florida Peninsula, because they're very interesting. With most U.S. megalopolises, the shift has been at least mostly to the left, but with Florida, it seems to be doing the opposite. Over the last 2 elections, it's been fairly safely Republican, and it doesn't seem like that'll change, at least over the next 8 to 12 years. After that, we'll just have to see what happens. This seems to be coming from the type of people moving to Florida, that being predominantly older and white people, who seem to overall vote more Republican. I'll stop now before I get yelled at, but this seems to be a less obvious shift, unlike that of something like the Texas Triangle, which is very obviously going to the left. Overall, the Florida Peninsula megalopolis interests me probably more than any other in the country. I love and hate the way that the entire state has connected itself, and it's absolutely fascinating. None of us know what the future holds for Florida, but we can guess that over the next 20 years, it'll continue to grow rapidly. Thanks for watching. Thank you to the members this week: Hazev the Wolf, Jake Holloway, Somnam Woods, JL, Jeremy Crone, Carport, Dominic Psyche, Rosebud 4, Aaron Washington, and Bryson. We've gotten a lot of new members recently, so I really appreciate that a ton. If you want to become a member, it's super easy. You can give me anything from $2 a month to $25 a month. It's completely up to you. It's really just an extra way to give back to the channel if you really like the content. You can make sure that none of this money is going to a bad cause. It's all just going into my bank account, and I'm saving for college with it. So you're really just supporting me as a person. So if you're interested in doing that, the link is in the description below as well as next to the subscribe button. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it a ton.